Hi, my dear Astro family. Today I wanted to make a video about Pluto being on 29 degree of Capricorn because it's coming up, and there will be one more time when it's going to be in on 29 degree of Capricorn, but that's going to be happening in 2024, sometimes between September and November. So I thought it would be a brilliant time to make a video about this. The second reason why I wanted to make a video because I'm preparing a presentation on Saturn Mars cycle, which I'm going to be holding a webinar about next weekend. And what's interesting about Saturn and Mars is that every 30 years they meet in the sign of Cancer. And obviously, that's the fall and the detrimental sign of both planets. And basically, a new cycle starts there. Now, I was looking at what was going on previously, and the Saturn Mars conjunction took place in 2020, March 31st, and it happened on 0 degree of Aquarius. And of course, Pluto moving out of the sign of Capricorn, it will be going into 0 degree of Aquarius. And basically, it will be triggering the 0 degree of Aquarius again, where the Saturn Mars conjunction took place. And that's where we had Saturn and Jupiter conjunction as well. So I wanted to explore this a little bit more. So if you are interested how it works, then listen to the very end and please subscribe to my channel as well as like the video. And if you want, subscribe to my newsletters as well. And of course, I've got weekly forecasts going on for my Patreons. So you will be able to sign up on my YouTube channel if you want to know more detailed astrology. So let's get started with, one more thing. On the 7th of January, I will be launching a completely new series on medical astrology. It's going to be 15, 16 weeks, and I will teach you as much as possible about medical astrology. If that's something you are interested in, then I would like to see you on that class. Now, let's get started with Pluto being on 29 degree, because I feel like this is going to be a interesting ride for two reasons. So the Saturn-Mars cycle, which is going to be getting activated, but secondly, Mars is also going to be out of bound from the 20th of December. So to give you some dates to start with, when Pluto was on anaretic degree, basically it was on anaretic degree between February 11th and 23rd of March 2023. Then from June 11th till July 27th, 2023, and then December 19th, 2023 till January 20th, 2024. And last but not least, we're going to have from 1st of September till November 19th, 2024. So you can see that it's spending quite a lot of time on that anaretic degree. Now, I think this December 19th till January 20th, it might be a bit more on the rough period. And let me tell you why. Because on one hand, the Mars anaretic degree is starting on the 19th, 20th of December, and it's happening until the 23rd of January 2024. Now, how interesting that it happens exactly at the same time when we have got the Pluto being on anaretic degree. So this could really stir some pot up. Of course, Pluto and Mars can be very volatile energy. So we might be hitting a rough time coming to the end of the year. And then Mars, the next time when it's going to be out of bound, that's going to be happening from 7th of September till 17th of September 2024. So again, when Pluto is on anaretic degree as well. Even it's going to be on from the 30th of December till the 7th of April as well, 2025. That's going to be a longer period of time, but maybe I'm going to be making a video about that when we are coming closer. So to get you a couple of, important stuff out there, because some of you might not be aware of what an anaretic degree is. Anaretic degree is a 0 and the 29 degree of the chart. So the 29th degree we're going to be specifically talking about typically is about unfinished businesses, pretty much the last touches of something. You know, with the 29 degree, we always try to look forward, but then somehow we get stuck in a situation. So we move backwards as well at the same time. I would call it as the degree of indecision. You have to be measuring things up. What worked, what did not work, where we have deficiency going on in our life, but also where we are in a hurry, feeling, and then it can make us a bit more scattered. I tend to call this as the Virgo and the Pisces axis, by the way. And the reason being, I mean, let's not go into that, but this is so much connected with Virgo and Pisces overall, in my opinion. And that would talk to you about the productivity and the sacrifice and certain type of healings that needs to be done. Often the 29 degree in people's life indicate a stale state. Now, the anaretic degree, it comes from the word anarita, which is the destroyer degree. So the ancient concept says that it can really ruin your life pretty much. Now, this is the 30th degree, okay? So basically from 29 to 2959. And in modern world, we do not call it as anarita anymore. We call it as critical degree. So critical means crisis situations, right? So we have got some choices, decisions to make, some verdicts to make a choice, to decide over something as well. Now, in natal charts, when you have got 29 degree going on, often it indicates career changes, for example, or events happening in your life that requires you to make an urgent decision, but you might not be able to make up your mind. It can also indicate some element of confusion. Remember that 29 degree is a Virgo Pisces axis. The last step of the previous life was screwed up, so we are here to somehow finish that up from a karmic point of view. But at the same time, we are ready for new challenges, but not knowing how to make that step. And then we can become nervous about it. Again, this is the Virgo and the Pisces axis. Now, they tend to be looking at actually the 29 degree always as a difficult one. And in some instances, surely it will be. Um, the reason why they look at it as negative, when you look at the turntable of Ptolemy, for example, then you will be able to see that the last 4 or 5 degree of the sign by term is always ruled either by Saturn or Mars. So that's why they call it as more of a, a challenging degree. But I do believe that with 29 degree, we are pushing boundaries. We're looking at our personal limits as well. We are a little bit more risk takers, how far we can stretch out. We've got a futuristic way of thinking. Surely we have got the ability to see the future as well, but we might be scared of them. Often 29 degree actually indicates that we had troubled childhood or unusual circumstances around birth, or we do some unusual occupations, for example. You have got unusual abilities. Some people actually look at 29 degrees as a fame or millionaire degrees, especially in the sign of Cancer, 29 degree of Cancer. That's called the millionaire's degree. Not too sure about that, though, whether I would call it or not. But how I tend to be working with the 29 degree is that I look at what type of fixed stars we've got there. And because that might be telling us, whether it is more of a challenge or not so much. So when I look at 29 degree Aries, we've got Alrisha there, which is typically a fortunate star, but 29 degree of Taurus, where we've got the Weeping Sisters degree, and that talks about accidents, blindness, violence, and so forth. Not too great. We've got the Gemini 29 degree, where we've got Betelgeuse. That would talk about danger and violence also. and so forth. But when we look at Leo, where we've got Regulus, or used to be Regulus, right? That's one of the most royal stars. That's one of the most beneficial sign as well. So I would not be looking at as so much of a difficult type of things. The other reason why 29 degree was looked at as a difficult degree, because it usually indicates that the planet is void. Now, void means that it's not going to be making any major aspect before it changes sign. So it's kind of like if there is no aspect, no one to talk to. So it would indicate an element of loneliness as well, or no one can talk you down off the ledges, for example. So you might become a little bit more on the crazier side in a way. Now, don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that this is the degree of craziness, okay? But it could indicate that you have got certain type of challenges in a way. So that would be the 29 degree. Now, of course, when we are looking at what is Pluto in our natal chart, because we're going to have to somehow tie these together. I mean, Pluto is a dwarf planet and it represents transformation, power, empowerment, control, depth, intensifies things. It's very domineering as well. It could show the ways how you fight for your own power or against power, how you try to take control of your own life, but also it shows where you need to transform your life. I usually say that with Pluto, you never look backwards, you always look forward, embrace the change. Don't hesitate to allow something to enter your life. So especially if you've got any planets on 29 degree, then you might want to be tying up the information. And maybe you don't even have to have aspects with those 29 degrees. Because in my experience, whenever you've got something on 29 degree and another slow moving energy is on 29 degree, it's going to be affecting it somehow. And often Pluto is about healing the trauma, what we've got within us. If not, we are not embracing the change, then it becomes the great destroyer. And then it forces you to change life somehow. So, especially with squares and oppositions, I would say. But either way, if you've got any planets on 29 degree, how you can transform that for the better. And typically, I usually say that with Pluto, things are going to get a lot better in the future, but you might not be able to see it right now. Taking the power back over your life, not giving the control away. I think these are the most important keywords with Pluto's transitioning into the sign of Aquarius. So what shall we expect when the anaretic Pluto is in the sign of Capricorn? Well, let's look at what Capricorn is. It's about businesses, it's government, it's the corporate world, but also it could indicate the structure of countries or bigger institutions. It could represent the construction industry, for example, and something to do with finances as well. So we might see some type of scandal coming out, for example, when it comes to politicians or governments, or maybe a governmental figure is going to be forced to do something. Now, I looked at what happened previously. Obviously, it started in June. And what I noticed is that all of a sudden the news were full on Boris Johnson from the 10th of June. And we had Pluto being on the anaretic degree from 11th of June till 27th of July. And I kind of found that interesting that it was all over the news. So is anyone going to get forced pretty much to to step down somehow from their position in any of these fields? So banking, government, and so forth, whatever I mentioned to you before. So, I mean, Pluto in the sign of Capricorn is pretty much trying to knock down the barriers, what we've got. So, on a personal level, obviously putting your fears aside to face them, to have a control over your fears. But in the mundane world, this would talk to us about, what do we need these borders for? Let people just cross or these type of things. Or it just wants to destroy some governmental regulation, for example, over certain type of things. It could, by the way, bring the death of a politicians or a political figure overall. Also, it could indicate that, I mean, typically Pluto on the 29th degree brings some chaos for us. So obviously, again, looking at what was going on back in, history, I mean, we had Pluto being on the anaretic degree in February and March 2023, and unfortunately, we had a very devastating earthquake happening. For example, in Turkey, that was one of the biggest ones of the century, I guess. So this might be something we should be expecting as well. The June period, as I said, was full on Boris Johnson and so forth, but we had some other demonstrations going on in the world as well, unfortunately, especially as far as I remember in Europe. Now, when it comes to making these changes in your life, remember that the dispositor of Capricorn is Saturn. So Saturn wants us to make these changes slowly, measuring whether it's the right decision or the wrong decision. It wants you to take responsibility for your decision. It wants you to make a smart choice somehow. With Saturn, it's all about making sure, I mean, it's pretty much doing the homework. It's not about missing lectures and so forth. We're going to have to follow somehow a step-by-step guide with that. So we should be expecting a bit of a chaos when it comes to, unfortunately, this Pluto anaretic energy. On a personal level, this would definitely talk to you about somehow revealing your own truth. It could indicate that your life is going to take a change, a directional change. You're going to have new obsessions somehow. You're going to discover new facets of your life as well. And that's very, very exciting. That's the positive side of that. Maybe this 29 degree of Capricorn is asking you to somehow climb the hierarchy ladder. But remember, the 29 degree often comes with a feeling of urgency as well. You have to make a summary what was going on in your life since 2008. I mean, remember that Pluto went into the sign of Aquarius sometimes in 2008, and as soon as Pluto shifted into Capricorn, we had an economic crisis situation, and Capricorn rules economy. So, unfortunately, this could definitely talk to us about that, there is going to be a crash somehow coming up in the financial industry before things are going to be getting better. So, that's important. Now, what I wanted also to talk about is that, as I mentioned, we had this latest Saturn Mars cycle, which started on 31st of March 2020 on 0 degree of Aquarius. Now, we're looking at the synodic cycle of two planets. We always have got 8 phases of a cycle, just like with the sun and the moon. And it's very interesting that the first two, so the new moon phase and the next one, happened within about 14 months. So that was a really long period. And when we got to the gibbous phase, to a closing square phase, basically 4 phases we went through, that took approximately about 7 months to complete. Now, obviously, there was a retrograde motion going on for Mars as well, so that's why it took a little bit longer. And then the last quarter phase started on 4th of April 2022, right? So when I work with the phases of the planets, I tend to be looking at, who has got the upper hand in the story. Now, this conjunction happened on 0 degree of Aquarius. So Saturn had the upper hand big time. So Saturn is about limitations and burdens and heaviness. And Mars would like to push forward. So what happens here is that our desires get pretty much restricted somehow. We need to put our survival needs aside, and somehow society wins here because that's Saturn. Saturn is a social planet, so often it represents the rules, what we get from society and governments, right? Now we had the opening square, which is the first quarter moon phase, basically starting on 24th of August 2020. And that happened on 26 degree of Capricorn to 26 degree of Aries. So what happened is that, both planets were extremely strong, but Saturn was still slightly bit stronger because it also had term strength as well, but Mars was in rulerships. So it's kind of like, the society comes up with some type of rules, but Mars fights back and it says, enough is enough, you know. Then we had another opening square on the 29th due to some retrograde motion. It happened on 25 degree of Capricorn to um, um, Aries. So, what? They both were extremely strong. And then we had lastly the final square on 13th of January 2021, but that happened from Aquarius to Taurus. Now, Mars was in detriment, and Saturn went into even a stronger position because in Aquarius it has got triplicity rulership as well, apart from rulership. So it could show again how much we were forced to do something. Just think back what was going on around those dates in your life as well. How the struggle, you want to push forward, but you get a no from the universe or from the government. So where did you get no's from? And so forth. Because this is getting activated for you again with Pluto. So maybe it's about your plans, how to change, how to look at your personal desire, and so forth. Now we are in the closing square currently, right? And Mars was in the sign. I mean, it started on Mars with Scorpio. Mars in Scorpio is extremely strong. And then we had Saturn in the sign of Aquarius still, where also Saturn is extremely strong. But Mars is the diurnal sign of Scorpio. It's pretty strong there. It's about revenge, it's about fights, it's about control. Scorpio is about self-preservation, being powerful. It's willing to go as far as possible. So this is the period of time, unfortunately, when certain type of wars started in the world because we kind of had enough, right? So this Pluto being on the anaretic degree, unfortunately, can take the wars a little bit even further than before. And I don't think it would be the Ukrainian one. This could be the escalation of the Palestine and so forth. So that is a bit of a you know, I mean, it doesn't look that good, to be frank. And by the way, the new cycle of Saturn and Mars is starting around 8th or 9th of April 2024 in the sign of Pisces. And that is real close to the Uranus-Jupiter conjunction as well. So I again find it quite interesting that bigger cycles are somehow coming together. Now, I also mentioned one other thing, and why I think that this end of year could be a bit more chaotic than usual is because Mars is going to be out of bound. Now, an out of bound planet is when the planet is not in the side of the sun. So the sun is unable to somehow to control it. That has got always a Uranian flavor to a planet, meaning that It's more rebellious. It tends to be acting out. Mars becomes a lot more violent. It becomes kind of like the criminal energy, or it really want to push forward. It becomes really determined and motivated to get somewhere. So yeah, unfortunately might be expecting a terror attack somewhere. I might be expecting a suicidal, attempt of someone, or I might be expecting someone to be killed with these energies. But the end of the year looks a little bit more on the rough side. On a personal level, I think it could really get you going to make a positive change in your life. And I would love to see that from many of us. Look at where these are falling in your chart. So to summarize up on it, where is the look at those Mars and Saturn dates, what I gave you, um, because those are quite prominent and they are going to be getting activated by um, indirectly by Pluto. So, what did you plan around 31st of March 2020? What happened in January 2021? And all those dates. But also look at the Plutonian dates on 29 degree as well, because you should see a story unfolding for yourself. And you are getting to the final touches of this. I mean, you're gonna have only one more shot left to make that profound change. And that's going to be happening from September till about 24th of November 2024. So this is pretty much, I think, what I wanted to um, share with you. I think Pluto on 29 degree gives loads of potentials. It makes you a little bit more action orientated. When you do not take action over your life, then Pluto forces you and then and then somehow wants to put you down into the grave. My aim is not to talk about death and so forth, but death is also a spiritual death as well. Remember that Pluto in Capricorn is a generational impact, right? So there is a system in place that are not working anymore, that is outdated, and we need to move forward from that. So what is that system you've got within the Capricorn house of yours? Maybe it's about the work rights. Maybe it's about the work-life balance of what you've got, right? Maybe it's how much not supported by the government currently, or making it impossible to have children because it's a very costly investment, for example. Maybe you're going to ask yourself the question, why do I need to work 60 hours a week? Right? To be in service of a company that doesn't even pay me enough holidays and so forth. You know, it's not about being lazy with Capricorn. It's just about not being able to enjoy life to the fullest, right? And not getting the recognition I think I deserve. Maybe it's your connections with authority figures. Maybe they are too controlling. Maybe they are pushing you to your limits, Capricorn. Maybe they make you overwork and then you feel burned out somehow. Maybe, in a positive way, this is making you really ambitious. And what are the barriers to achieve your dreams? Pluto is passion as well. So become passionate about the Capricorn house of your chart in the next 1 year. But you might be coming up with some type of struggles around those Saturn Mars degrees and dates I gave you. Also, it could talk to you about transforming the way how you look at parenting, how you were parented, whether you did self-parenting on yourself. So there is something, again, maybe to bury here, to let go of. Yes, we are we are around changes as I mentioned before, we've got made 6 major planetary changes happening in this decade, and the changes are never easy. And that's why I suspected that this decade would be difficult for loads of people overall. But I think the next decade is going to be a lot easier. Even, excuse me, Pluto moving into the sign of Aquarius, which I might have made quite a few video about it, but we're going to have to relook at it real soon. But these are our social signs. So the society is changing significantly. Aquarius is about liberating yourself from something. So you're going to have to, excuse me, you're going to have to, liberate. You're going to have to free yourself up from certain type of Capricornian chains. Aquarius is always afraid of being controlled, um, being manipulated by others. So this is all about human rights and equality. So what I'm really suspecting is, because Capricorn is meant to be ruling, democracy and all these type of things, which I believe it's not a true fact. Unfortunately, we live in democracy in many places, but it's not really democracy, right? But in Aquarius, we're going to be having to be careful because it's a fixed air sign. So it talks about our fixed ideologies. So Pluto wants us to loosen up a little bit over there as well when it comes to your ideas and so forth. But anyway, about that later on. Thank you, everyone, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.